Hello and welcome to Tech Hub. A very happy new year to you all, dear viewers. Welcome to 2025. I am Kenneth Akan. Today on the show, we'll start by looking at the fact that Nigerians are expected to pay more for calls, data, and SMS from January 10, 2025. And we'll also be discussing NITDA releasing a white paper on a new bill to protect Nigerians against online harm. And our big story today will be a discussion on uplifting off-grid communities and driving economic growth through technology across Nigeria and Africa. Starting Friday, January 10th, 2025, Nigerians will experience increased cost for voice calls, SMS, and internet data plans and other telecom services. The Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, is set to announce the tariff hike after telecom operators have argued that inflation and naira devaluation have made current rates unsustainable. Dr. Bosun Tijani, the Minister of Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy, confirmed the price increase during a stakeholder meeting. While acknowledging the necessity for tariff adjustment, he reassured the public that the hike would not reach the 100% increase some telecom operators had previously sought. Operating costs for telecom companies have surged by more than 300% over the last 18 to 24 months. Of course, we know that's not news, but asking for a 100% increase at this time might seem like so much of a burden on Nigerians. Telecom companies proposed a 40% increase in May 2022, which would raise the cost of a phone call from 11 naira per minute to 15 naira 40 kobo per minute. And will raise the cost of SMS charges from 4 naira per SMS to 5 naira 60 kobo per SMS. And the price of 1 gigabyte of data bundle would go from, say, 1,000 naira to 1,400 naira. Operators emphasize the need for a phased approach to avoid burdening consumers. We're hoping that the minister tilts to the side of the masses on this one, and asking for 100%, like I said before, might be too outrageous. So let's look for something that's quite fair and balanced for everyone to take advantage of this situation. To our next trending story, NITDA releases white paper on new bill to protect Nigerians against online harm. The National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA, in collaboration with the Advocacy for Policy Innovation, API, has released a white paper on the framework for an online harms protection bill in Nigeria. This landmark document aims to tackle the growing issue of online harms while fostering a digital ecosystem. A comprehensive legal framework for protecting Nigerians online highlights the prevalence of harms, threats to children and vulnerable groups, and proposes strategic tailored ways to pay attention to this in the Nigerian context. Now, this white paper is drawing from global regulatory efforts and insights from various stakeholders. Despite efforts in the past, including the Cybercrime Act of 2015, the Internet Code of Practice, NITDA emphasizes the need for a more robust online harm protection law due to the evolving nature of online threats. What you should know is that to address the challenge of online harm, Nigeria had in the past come up with several laws, and such laws as the Internet Code of Practice that was done in 2017, the Nigerian Broadcasting Code of 2020, the NITDA Code of Practice for interactive computer service platforms that was released in 2022. Such proposals, such legislative and regulatory proposals have not really seen the light of day as they aim to shield Nigerians from online dangers. However, all of these regulatory efforts have encountered criticisms, mostly around the perceived inadequacies and the constriction of civic space and also of human rights. But we are hoping that this changes. Looking at 2025, it's the year of cybersecurity. It concerns everyone, and we're hoping that those laws that would protect Nigerians in the online space would be looked at. A discussion on uplifting off-grid communities and driving economic growth through technological advancement and through technology across Nigeria and Africa is still to come. Today we're tackling a pressing issue of powering underserved off-grid communities in Nigeria and Africa with technology. Mr. Alamin Idris, the visionary CEO of Interface Africa, AI, as it's fondly called, has been making waves across the continent by unlocking untapped opportunity and providing innovative solutions to some of Africa's most pressing challenges of off-grid communities. Alamin, it's a pleasure to have you here with us on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Your work in empowering underserved communities and fostering local entrepreneurship is truly inspiring. Let's start this way. What inspired your journey into tech, and how has your background influenced your approach to solving societal problems through technology?
So I believe I've always been that person that loves tinkering with ideas, seeing how it solves or try to solve problems, at least in society where we are. It started back in university when we. It started back in university when we were in our second year, and there was this girl that was left in her school bus in Abu Dhabi, and she died of heat exhaustion. You know, the UAE can be pretty hot. So we came together with some of my colleagues and see, okay, how do we solve for things like that? And we came up with a bracelet that can help you track the temperature of your child and also what they are currently doing or where they are. You know, so things like that and the impact of things like that in the community are well, what's impactful, but how sustainable is that? You know, how do you solve for distribution? How do you solve for, actual pricing and all that? So it has to be commercially viable. And that's how I started getting into technology as a business and not just problem solving.
Fantastic. Globally, 2025 has been set to be that year where we'll put more focus on new energy, on clean tech, on climate tech, on green energy, on sustainability. My question to you now is, how important is providing clean energy solutions to off-grid communities, underserved communities, and what progress has been made in these areas so far?
Also, as we all know, if we have been practical, the grid might never get to some communities because it simply doesn't make any economic sense. To connect, the grid is primarily private owned, private driven. So it has to make commercial sense for them to drive adoption in communities like that. So it has to make commercial sense for them to drive connection in those communities. So if you have a cluster of 500 or even less homes, how do you take your grid all the way to those communities and then power them and then make money of it? It doesn't make much sense. So we see more opportunities in decentralization, whereby the source, where the community is where you generate the power, it's where you distribute the power, is also where you consume the power. Before 2024, the primary source for these communities that are beyond the grid has been fossil. And well, I don't need to say much about the price increase in fossil fuel, and it doesn't make any commercial or economic sense for people to keep powering their homes with fossil power generators. So it has moved from just being simply a case of sustainability, but also a case of commercial viability at the moment. So it's quite promising.
This is profound to know. Could you share some success stories of your impact serving underserved communities? Let's start with Nigeria, with your work in Nigeria so far. How many homes have you been able to power, and for how long, and how have you been able to do this? Just share some success stories of your impact with us.
So, so far we have been able to, through our platform, power over 35,000 homes across over 100 communities in Nigeria. Well, it simply means people that otherwise wouldn't have access to solar power because they simply can't afford it now can do that because, one, we connect them to reliable providers, and secondly, we also connect them to affordable solar financiers that enable them pay over time. So you don't have to pay the outright cost of solar. You can spread out your payment with something as minimal as 5,000 naira per week, which is about 3-4 liters of petroleum. So it makes more sense for you to just go solar. So it has increased the reach. We so far, we've done 35,000 of those, which simply means we have saved over 50,000 metric tons of carbon emission over the last year. But the numbers are not just in the quantitative, but also qualitatively, the impact on individual livelihoods, economic, educational, health-wise, bringing power to people really is life-changing, literally. You see increase in productivity, they can now stay connected online, they can now collect digital payments, they can now, students can now study more at night, health benefit as well for a safer environment. All of those things are also benefits we look at.
About powering over 35,000 homes and saving over 50,000 metric tons of, is it metric tons or megawatts of, how do you define that? How do you measure? Say that again?
Metric tons of carbon emission, yes.
50,000 metric tons of carbon emission is what you've saved. And in how long have you been able to do this? And where?
So we've been doing this for just over 3 years, but of course most of the growth came over the last year because everyone is practically moving. So there's this move around energy transition, and now it's not just a sustainability case, but an economical one. So
technology that you're bringing to middle class and low income homes to be able to have power.
Absolutely, yes.
All right. How affordable is this technology that you've provided and you're championing for low-income earners in the regions that you're serving right now? How affordable is it, and how life-transforming has it been for them?
All right. So the low-income earners of Nigeria are some of the lowest income earners anywhere in the world. Unfortunately, they also spend the most on energy. Because if you look at places like North America or Europe, what's the cost per kilowatt hour of energy generation? Because most of their energy comes from the grid. But for people in last mile underserved communities, most of their energy comes from generators. It's either diesel powered or petrol powered, and what's the cost per liter of diesel or petrol, and what's the cost when you convert it? Then you look at numbers around $0.50 dollars per kilowatt hour, when the average cost all over the developed world is about 0.10, about 10 cents per kilowatt hour rather. So so it only makes sense for them to move to solar because first, they don't have much for power in terms of devices. It's basically lighting, basic entertainment, cooling. In terms of fan systems, there may be refrigerators, for storage of their produce or even household items. So that really moves the needle for them. That really is truly life changing.
Move back into the tech ecosystem in Nigeria and Africa generally. What role do you think government and private sector partnerships play in fostering a thriving tech ecosystem like Nigeria? Looking at businesses like yours and what you're doing across Nigeria and Africa, what role do you see the government play and private sector as well to further push this kind of solutions out there better?
I think the government is doing an amazing job all the way from upstream, midstream to the downstream sector of where I'm primarily focused, which is sustainable technologies for energy consumption and access. On the upstream part of things, we see more things around lithium development being championed by this government. We see things around processing and of the batteries themselves and the panels with great work agencies like NASA is doing to drive solar production using homegrown technologies here. Midstream, downstream, we see a lot of help being provided to people that do local assembly. We also see downstream with the distribution. There are a lot of programs rather from agencies like REA that actually gives performance-based grants to players in the market. So it makes it easy for people to adopt because almost half of your cost is already covered by the government subsidy. It also makes it easier for the people that power these homes and businesses to drive sales in places that otherwise they wouldn't really want to go there. But because of the incentive by the government, they really try to move adoption there. So policy, the technology part of policy is really moving. We've seen great work from the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy with regards to the Startup Act, Startup Bill as it started. We also see policies around generation of power within communities that consume them within the Ministry of Power and their relevant agencies. So in as much as there is a lot left to be done, we have seen significant progress over the last couple of years in technology, energy, and also development policies.
How can international partnerships support entrepreneurs in Africa to drive sustainable development and economic growth? I see you've done some work doing a research around partnership with, is it Afro-Exim Bank, or what kinds of partnerships have you had? But in general, how do you see international partnerships supporting entrepreneurs in Africa to drive sustainable growth and economic growth as well?
Yes, so the work you mentioned is that of the AFDB, African Development Bank, and the World Bank as well is championing something around the next 300 million connections in Africa, getting power to the next 300 million people. And it's something that's in the works. And we believe under the presidency of Dr. Akin Adeshina, we have seen tremendous progress in generally, the international community, be it multilateral or bilateral organizations, have seen things they can champion. There's much left to be done. I was at COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, where we organized an event on how to harness data to unlock potentials in this downstream energy sector in Nigeria. And the acceptance was great, to say the least. People see the emerging markets, the global south, as places to offset their carbon emission. And of course, the market is still voluntary, but when you volunteer to offset or you volunteer to meet your net zero target, you have to comply. If not, you can be charged with investment fraud. So if a company say by 2050 we hope to get here.
What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs looking to make a positive impact in their communities through technology?
So I think one big challenge aspiring entrepreneurs have is first, not being problem-driven, but rather most of the solutions we see are actually solutions looking for problems, which is very, very difficult to solve. I'm not trying to say it doesn't work, but when you are being problem-oriented first, it then becomes easier for you to find solutions. So solutions are easier than problems to harness and find and solve for. So you start with the problem, look for ways and the best ways to solve for it. But when you already have working tools, everything you see, when you are working with a nail, with a hammer, everything you see becomes a nail. Well, when you have a nail that you need to drive, then getting any working tool, be it a stone, a hammer, anything, just anything that works for it will come in very handy, and it becomes easier for you to drive the nail than you having a hammer just walking around looking for nails to drive.
That's interesting. As we wrap this up, I want to ask you, what are your predictions for the new energy sector, for clean energy, climate tech sector in 2025? What are you seeing? What are your thoughts at with regards to where this year would go?
So I love the exclamation when I mentioned our numbers, 35,000, and you felt like we have done some great work. No, you should be asking about our market penetration. How much of the market have we closed? We have over 40 million businesses, just small businesses in Nigeria that need power. Not to talk of homes, not to talk of farmers, not to talk of anything else. So we have done less than 0.1% of the market in general. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and we see significant progress from all stakeholders involved in the market or in the system. And through that, hopefully this year, we should be able to. So last year we grew by over 2,000%, and this year the sky is the limit. But
interesting.
we want to do at least another 2,000% or more.
Awesome, awesome. And what are your final words as we begin to wrap up the show? What are your final words for our viewers today?
So my final words should be around emerging technologies. There are a lot of opportunities. Things are becoming way easier to solve for right now. And if you like, you can actually do much with limited resources. Things have changed over the last 2-3 years. With the emerging of AI and other emerging technological tools that will help people, solve problems that they wouldn't even dare do 2-3 years ago. So I think we should be looking at harnessing those opportunities to actually solve most of the problems we have in our societies. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Idris, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. I mean, this is a conversation we'll always want to keep having, so you're going to be a regular on the show. We'll be bringing you back from time to time. And that's it, viewers. That's a wrap on the show today. Follow us on social media social media handles to follow us on the conversation, and join us same time next week for more exciting tech updates. And remember, technology is a tool for lasting change. Until next time, I am Kenneth Akan. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.